you really got to understand people, process, and in my world, you got to understand the technology. So you always need to be learning, right? You can't stand still. I'm a salesperson. I don't really need to understand all the technology. Yes, you do. Because the buying process for software has changed so much.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? That's because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for the team. On this podcast, you're going to hear from experts from around the world who can offer you insights to enhance your messaging and your communication. My guest today is Rick McCutcheon. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Rick. 1, he's been awarded the Microsoft MVP designation 11 times. Under the category of business applications, an MVP is not most valuable player, it's most valuable professional. 2, in his practice today, he works privately with Microsoft Business Application Partners, both ISV and SI-VARs, and he's going to have to explain to us what that means. And 3, he hosts his own podcast called Partner Talks and has completed over 240 episodes over the past 4 years. Rick McCutcheon, delighted to be talking with you. Welcome to Your Intended Message.
Hello, George. Thanks for having me on your show. I've been viewing it for quite a long time now, and I was glad when you reached out to ask me to become a participant.
Delighted to be talking with you. And yes, it's ironic. We've known each other for years, and finally we're getting together here on this podcast. Rick, in our last discussion, you raised a point that I thought was worth exploring. And I noticed in your own business, your consulting, over the years, it's changed. And one of the biggest changes that I believe you've made was to focus on a tiny or on a specific niche. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly, George. So let me just kind of take you through the 3 points again, and then I'll jump right on that question. So when we talk about MVP, most valuable professional, I was awarded that the first time nearly 12 years ago. And what Microsoft has set aside is this designation for Microsoft partners and for customers where people do sort of extraordinary work in the channel, both from a technical perspective or from an evangelist perspective. Did a lot of work for Microsoft setting up their user group communities over the years, and that sort of got me my designation. And that's sort of my side hustle is I work with several organizations, mostly with one called Doug, where we set up user groups, and we do one for the Canadian National Group for Dynamics. We also do one for marketing professionals in Dynamics. So very, honored to have the MVP designation from Microsoft. And in my own practice, what I do is I started out doing CRM. So I spent a good 25 years building CRM systems for companies and building a CRM company. That was eventually acquired. So I really kind of switched my thought process, and what I want to do for people within Dynamics is I want to work with partners, helping them build their practices. And we mentioned ISV and SI partners. ISVs are independent software vendors. Those are organizations that build product that attach to the Microsoft Business Application family. So their own software companies, but they work with Microsoft. And I also work with SI/VAR partners, and those are the ones who actually implement both ISV and Microsoft solutions for business. So I do a whole thing around practice management, around acceleration, but a big part of my business today is working with partners around presentation skills. And also, how to get your message, which kind of fits perfectly into intended message, how to get your message across, because, if I'm a rep for an ISV company, I may be talking to Microsoft one day. I may be talking to an SI VAR one day about, reselling my products, or, every day I'm talking to end user customers. And what the value of your organization to each one of those groups is very, very different. So I work with ISVs putting together models to say, okay, we're talking to Microsoft. This is how we want to talk about your product. We're talking to another partner, an SI partner. This is the value to them. This is how you want to talk about it. And I think it's, the favorite part of my work is actually working with these organizations, putting these models together.
And Rick, what I'm hearing there is that there's a whole mindset and language within this environment, within the channel, but depending on who you're dealing with, you need to talk to those people differently because they see it from a different perspective. Is that fair?
Well, different perspective, but, the value to them, what's in it for you? So I'll give you an example. I work with a European company called Resco, and what they do is advanced mobility solutions for the Microsoft world, which means that, for example, if I have to go offline and work 3 or 4 days in the remote, I can come back and synchronize all my business applications, which can be a lot of data, back into the cloud. Good example is they do work with the United Nations, where they're going out and scanning refugees. Could be in the desert, could be wherever, and identifying who these people are, where they're moving to. And they're really, really offline for days and maybe weeks at a time. They have to come back and synchronize their data. Or they may work with an oil company where, they got people going offshore doing inspections. And this is a good example. After they've worked for a week offshore, they come back in, we've got to synchronize this data. So it's very complicated synchronization. So, we work with Resco and they do a great job. Is when I'm talking to Microsoft, the value to them is when you're talking to your enterprise customers, this makes you more competitive, right? Because you're up against, Oracle, SAP, other companies that provide this. How do we position Microsoft with Resco? When we're talking to a VAR, we want to talk about this is a solution that you can present to your customers that you can make money with, right? This is another solution you can go to and work with the customer and get a project. And that's what they're looking for. Thirdly, and of course, they want to help the customer with what they need as well. And when they talk to customers, the value we want to talk about is the value of that data and how difficult it is to work with synchronization. You might have people trying to work with Excel spreadsheets and other things. So we really work on the messaging around the value of bringing that data back in a clean, secure state. So same product, does the same thing, but my message to 3 different organizations can be the same in a lot of ways, but different in other ways.
Rick, what is it that allows you to deliver the appropriate message to each person in the chain? What do you bring that they are missing?
Well, 25 years of experience delivering projects in the field. And I was the founder of a company, had 35 employees doing this. So I kind of dealt on all levels. We were an ISV. So I had to deal with Microsoft. I had to deal with customers. I had to deal with partners. And also because of my training, I was heavily involved with the Canadian Professional Sales Association as a, designated professional. I was on their board of directors. We put a whole program together for professional selling designation. So I was involved with a lot of presentation skills. And it sort of molded together that when I started to work with other partners and I started to watch them present to Microsoft, to another SI partner, to an end user customer, they're kind of using the same deck and the same presentation. So I'm going, let's tinker with that. You've got your deck, you understand your message of the value of your product. Now let's just play with it a little bit and talk about the value to different organizations.
When they, and that's funny that they want to use the same slide deck for different audiences, different messages. When you look at those slide decks, where are the easiest places to make critical changes?
Well, I've got a formula for it now, right? So I've got a formula, and I've done over 100 thought leadership programs for MS Dynamics World, which is a third-party website that presents Microsoft business application information. So I've worked with a lot of different partners kind of building this out. So I built a template and I built a formula. So it's really like who you are, what you do, why you're successful. Let's get their attention. And then go to the value proposition for your audience. So we want them to pay attention, who you are, what you do, and then to the value proposition. Take them through a little bit of the product, take them through, if they're a partner, take them a bit through your partner program, and keep it very, very simple the first time. Get away from the technical deep dives in those meetings, because a lot of partners, they're technical people, so they want to come out and they want to demo the product, right? Which there's a place for that, but depending on your audience. Another thing I make them become very aware of is understanding who their audience is. So, if I'm presenting to an end user customer and I get a meeting invite, and I kind of always ask them to send me a meeting invite because I want to see who they're also inviting to the meeting. So I can reply all, look, see who those people are, go on LinkedIn, understand everybody's position, who they are and what they do. So we can come back and really prepare to say, hey, look, they've got a senior channel person on here. Look, they've got their CEO on here. So you can start to understand the level of presentation that you have to make.
Rick, I'm going to emphasize that because I think that's $1 million tip right there. So when you when you are going to be part of a meeting, ensure that they send you the invite, and 2, you check out who else has been invited so that when you arrive, you understand what their perspective is. And as opposed to being blindsided. Oh, I didn't know you were going to be here. I didn't know this was going to be a real meeting.
So if their CFO is going to be on the call, you better have some strong ROI slides.
Another great tip right there. Yes. Wow.
Oh, I can go on with this all day long, George.
Rick, would you describe yourself as a nerd?
No, not at all. I'm a business application specialist, an analyst. So I've been in this so long, and I've had developers working for me that I can get in a room and completely understand what they're talking about, draw out what we need to do, but I don't do any coding or anything like that. So I'm more of a business application specialist. If you want to hook up anything back from when that order came from the customer right to when it becomes cash in your organization, I've worked on all those systems. So I have a very solid understanding. And I think, coming up and working closely with the Canadian Professional Sales Association really gave me a background to understand presentation skills. So that's where I kind of can mold the whole thing together. And of course, all the thought leadership sessions I did for MS Dynamics World, I really got close to a lot of different software companies that did a lot of different things to talk about their value proposition.
What were some of the most valuable lessons that you gained from your connection with the Sales Association?
Oh, well, the whole thing around professionalism, and it's a career, right? So people who think that, I'm in sales and, it's just a transactional thing. No, you really got to understand people, process, and in my world, you got to understand the technology. So you always need to be learning, right? You can't stand still. And, I see that a lot. I'm a salesperson. I don't really need to understand all the technology. Yes, you do. And it's becoming critical today because the buying process for software has changed so much. We've gone from, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, where we had more control of the sales process because we had the information in our hands that the people wanted, the buyer wanted. Now, if we start to look at buyer journey, they're really somewhere around 80, 90% through the buying process before they have to talk to us. They can go out and find out what your software does. They can find out who you compete against. They can find out your pricing. they can find out whether you have satisfied customers all before they ever talk to you, because we have access to review sites, we have access to user group communities, and your website and videos and everything else. So it's becoming crucial that when they get to you as a sales professional, you better know as much as they do about you and your competitors and where you fit. Also, you need to know where to guide them. They're looking for a sales professional that can be a Sherpa or guide and say, okay, you're looking for AP automation. These are the things we have to understand. These are the things we have to look at. And that's what they want. They want help sorting it all out. And I think the sales professionals I know that act as a guide are by far the most successful in our space.
Act as a guide. Act as a guide, not someone say, hey, buy my product. Well,
George, in your case, you're a guide on professional speaking, right? You're trying to get your audience to better understand that it's not just how you deliver, it's what you deliver and kind of everything around it, right? How to be comfortable, how to add humor, how to be a specialist in your area. And in my case, I tell people all the time, stick to your corridor. Don't go out of your corridor, because as soon as you go out of that corridor, you drop off, how you can help people, and you're less likely to succeed. So just find your way, find your path, and keep working that path.
Do you believe that a good salesperson, an accomplished salesperson, can sell anything?
No, not anymore. I think you have to have selling skills, but you really have to sell a product you believe in, right? And, you don't sell as much anymore as we used to. Like, we used to take sales training to train us in sales judo, I'd call it. We'll say this, they say that, we'll flip this, we'll flip that. Really, if you're still in that mode, you're short-sighted. You're not going to last long. And also, I do a lot of work on the buying process, the buying journey, and I've got several videos on that. So if that customer has not entered the buying journey yet, if you go and talk to, hey, George, do you need some CRM software? Oh, no, I've never thought about that. I know it's going to take George 18 months to 3 years to make that decision if he's a corporation. Where if I can find somebody who downloaded a white paper on the top 10 CRM systems available in 2025, then okay, they're somewhere in that buying journey, somewhere in that buying process because they understand it. So when I'm working with organizations, I work with sales, but I work really from business development, right? How do we attract top of funnel? How do we move them to middle funnel? What do we got to do to close business?
That buying journey, I imagine that ideally you want to connect with people when they are close to the end of the journey. Is that fair to say?
Yes and no, right? Because I'll give you some links to a couple of videos I've done on this subject. There's a buyer journey. Let's say they're going to buy CRM software. So at the top of the funnel, they're out doing their personal research, right? George works and you're the director of sales and the CRM's not giving you the reporting you want. Or you're the marketing director and you're not giving the capabilities to push out content. It's all part of the CRM. So you say, you know what, I got to go and look for something a little bit different. So you go and you search. You either go and do SEO searches through Google, or you do an AI search through Bing, right? That type of thing. But you're starting to figure out what's out there. You'll go to a site like MS Dynamics World where you'll start to listen to things like thought leadership content, podcasts. And we've done a lot of study on what attracts them at the top level of the funnel, right? They want to learn. Now, once they've learned, they come back to the company and they'll meet as a group and say, folks, we need a new CRM. We kind of all know that. I've started a bit of research. Here's what I think we need. And the rest of the group will say, yeah, I worked with this CRM or that CRM, and we'll get some feedback. And then we'll make a project out of it. When we make a project out of it, what happens is they assign a researcher. And that researcher will then go to the web and start to really look at CRM systems. And they'll, I've got a whole sheet on this in our world. They'll go to websites. They'll go to review sites. They'll go to YouTube. So they go across the web looking at things. And hopefully we're going to put something out there they want to download or go to MS Dynamics World and view one of our videos. If that happens, then it's gated content. We're going to understand who they are. They're in the buying process, but they're not going to respond to a salesperson at this point because they're just doing research. In fact, that researcher will probably never be part of the buying team. Or they could, but they could not, right? So they're going to come back to their group and say, okay, how do you buy? Or what do we want to buy? How do we shortlist, right? Well, here's 5 CRMs we should look at. Or in my case, a lot of times they've said, we want to use Dynamics CRM, where we call it Dynamic Sales. They'll say, who are 5 partners that can help us install it, right? So they start to think about it, and they can do enough research, like I said, to find out the pricing, to find out who your customers are, find out, how big your organization is, all kinds of things. And they're going to come back and say, okay, here are the 5 partners we think we want to interview to see if they can help us. Well, if we're smart and we've hit them with some content, we know who they are, then we start to feed them content. So the idea is the content's going to get us on the short list. We're still going to have to win, but it's going to get us on the short list. Now, what happens is one of 3 things in my world. If they're a big enterprise account, they'll probably go to Microsoft and say, okay, we want to look at your product and we want you to help us pick a partner. They may go to their existing partner. Most people have a Microsoft partner and say, can you help us with this? That might be part of it. Or they could go on a search and look for a new partner. So stuff starts to happen out there, and that's when they start to engage with us or with Microsoft, or if I'm an ISV, with an SI partner. So I've got to find the people doing research, because if they're not doing research, then I'm too far above the funnel and it's just going to take too much time and I'm going to get too much rejection. So we've got to work within that. And then that's where our presentation skills come into play and our ability to help and guide. So whether I'm talking as an ISV, I'm talking to Microsoft, a customer, or an SI partner, I've got to present to them so they have confidence that George Torek can deliver, right? And that's where George Torek's going to shine. So that's what I do, George. I figure all this out for companies.
So find them when they're in the research mode. That's
you want to, if they're in mid-funnel or closing, you want to find them too. But the earlier on you can find people with content that are looking, the more successful you're going to be. And another thing the salespeople struggle with is they'll get the name of the researcher because they downloaded a document, but that researcher probably will never respond to a salesperson. So we'll see that sales rep reach out 10 times, nothing happens. What does that sales rep think that lead?
They think that they're not interested, they're not buying.
Yes. And so I have gone and we're doing projects. And I did this a few years ago. I looked at all their opportunities and I said to the administrator, I said, let's go and see if they showed up as leads and how long they've been in the system. Because we were trying to figure out how long it took from lead to close. Well, what surprised us is a lot of these opportunities showed up 2 and 3 times as leads, and the reps deleted them or decommissioned them, saying this company's not interested. Where this company was interested, but the researcher wasn't getting back to them, and the customer was so adamant about seeing their product, they just kept coming back. Right? So that goes to show you, never let a sales rep decommission a lead. It's got to go back to nurture, unless it's complete garbage. You can define that. But make sure that you've got a whole nurture sequence, even outside of what your salespeople are doing.
So if someone shows interest, even mild interest, don't write them off just yet. You don't know what speed they're moving at.
Or you don't know what speed they're moving at, or whether they're the researcher or part of the buying process. And in this world, we get so much content coming at us. If they actually attend your webinar and give you that time, there's something going on there, right? Nobody wastes their time showing up at webinars anymore. That's why I love doing webinars, love doing events, because you're kind of finding out what's real out there.
Let me see if I got that. And repeating for people. So if they show up at a webinar, that a hot lead?
Oh, I don't know if it's a hot lead. Like, I don't, you know what? I don't like that term hot and cold lead, right?
Okay.
I think about they've entered some kind of buying journey, right? They're interested. Whether they're interested at a very high level where they don't have a budget, or they're interested somewhere mid-market where they've got a budget, you don't know. So they're interested. There's some kind of journey going on that customer, on that prospect that we have to be aware of. And we don't know hot, cold, warm. Hot, cold, warm to me doesn't mean anything because sure, it's hot. Yeah, they're going to buy a CRM in 2 years, 3 years. Is that cold now because they're not ready to buy? No, I can't say, these are cold. These are sales rep from sales judo world, right? Where everything was transactional and we wanted to close them first. We can close them first call. Well, in my world, nobody closes anything first call, right? So it's part of that buying journey, which you have to align your sales process with. And that's a whole different webinar conversation.
Rick, when you work with these companies, the ISVs, do you end up drawing or sketching out kind of like a flow chart of, okay, if this happens, then that?
Yeah, I have very detailed Microsoft Visio charts of processes for an SI, for new business development, for account management, for partner relationship management, for Microsoft management. Some of the best practices, they're not all the same because they sort of sell a little differently, but I have these, and you can go to my full contact selling site. You'll see some of those. So I did talk about partner talks, but my original business was full contact selling. So Partner Talks is my podcast where I interview. Full Contact Selling is probably the site you knew me from, George. And that's where I help people with their sales process and understanding the customer buying journey.
Let's go back to the mindset of the people who you help. What do you find, or what have you discovered is the mindset that holds them back when it comes to selling?
They don't understand enough about the customer buying process or the buying journey. That has got to be the number one thing when I work with sales organizations. And if I survey them ahead of time and ask them to write out their customer buying journey, it comes in, well, a lead comes in the door, right? No. So they do not understand the customer buying journey. And it's interesting too, because I work with a lot of marketers who claim they understand this customer buying journey. They understand half or maybe 3/4. They don't understand, now I've got a lead, I process it top of funnel. What does the sales team need to do to move it? Like, I know we can, use content to work it and to nurture it. That's great. But we really have to switch it over because best companies have the best sales team that can help guide and Sherpa these people through the buying process.
Oh, so content alone isn't enough to take people through that journey. However, the content is needed.
Content's the honey going to attract the bears, right? But we've got to, bring the bears together and start talking to them and start interacting with them to find out, what else do they want? Do you want some salmon with that honey? Right? So, yes, for sure. It's just part of the puzzle.
And what typical questions should the content address?
Well, it depends, right? So you really want to go out to, I use a model called CCR, where we want to address the current circumstances of a company to understand where are you at, what do you do, what are your problems, right? And then the second C is the challenges. What are those challenges around those problems? So we'll use CRM. That's my favorite because most experience there. CRM's going to help with sales, going to help with marketing, going to help keep my processes together, going to help give me the reporting I need to understand, what we won, what we lost, what's current business, and what can I forecast in the future. Lots of things that we can talk about, but really I want to find out what the circumstances are for a company and talk about, is this you? We use that same CCR model from the sales perspective to ask questions to understand that. So what are your circumstances? Second one is, what are your challenges, right? What are the challenges that you're trying to overcome? And then the third one is ROI, right? So what kind of ROI are we talking about when we fix this problem? That's why I think, a white paper on, 10 problems that CRM solve for sales professionals, that gets downloaded a lot because, that's my circumstance. And my challenges are in there, right? So you want to attract them around, who they are and what they do, and talking to them.
White papers, is that a powerful prospecting tool? Is it a lead magnet?
These white papers are the technical side. So in my world, I'm going to have technical buyers, I'm going to have business buyers, and I'm going to have economic buyers, really. So, different content's going to reach out to different people, and so business leadership buyers. So, video on YouTube, absolutely about the category, about the problem, what we're trying to solve. That's for the business user. A video about the architecture. I like videos, by the way. Videos with a download of a white paper. That's for the technical people that are going to check it out. And then for the user, it's the how to use videos, right? How to use CRM to forecast your sales, right? So there's different video you can use, and we can associate downloads with those. Video will get them in, download will identify who they are.
Oh, use the video to catch their attention, and then offer the download to capture their information.
Absolutely, yes.
Whoa, powerful advice there. Rick, you mentioned your website, Partner Talks. Partner Talks is about what?
So Partner Talks is where I interview partners about their business. And we've done 240 episodes over the last almost 5 years now. So we're very happy with that. The other website is fullcontactselling.com. And that's my sales methodology, where I do this business of Partner Talks. I help them talk about the product. But when I'm actually working with them in an advisory role, it's more around full contact selling.
Those two sites, you can find those links in the description below. Rick, as we prepare to wrap up, when you sit down with a company leader in this tech world and you start the conversation with them, what are the first 1, 2, or 3 key bits of information that you want to get from them so that you understand where they're at?
Well, if I'm working with an ISV partner, it's really, I need to learn about your history, your product, how it's positioned. I do a lot of work with European companies. So how well are you doing in Europe? Have you moved to North America? What's going on in, Australia, right? That type of thing. So I need to understand where you're kind of at in the maturity of your business. Usually from a development side, a technical side, they're very mature. And then it varies when I look at sales and marketing. So a lot of times sales is more mature than marketing, or sometimes vice versa, right? So I have to really understand. And, if I'm working with somebody for the first time, I'll typically give them a questionnaire I've designed that give me a really good background of who they are and what they do. And it's, it's different for an SI partner. So an SI partner is selling basically to customers. So again, different set of questions, but really I've got to find out where your company is at in its journey.
Powerful advice. My guest today is Rick McCutcheon, reminding you that content is the honey that attracts the bears. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.